Ladies and gentlemen, building relationships on virtue rather than fleeting pleasure is a principle that fosters deeper, more meaningful connections that stand the test of time. In a world driven by instant gratification, many relationships are formed on the basis of convenience, pleasure, or personal gain. These connections, however, tend to be fragile and easily broken when circumstances change. When relationships are founded on virtue, they become resilient, fulfilling, and enriching for both individuals involved. Virtue provides a solid foundation, ensuring that relationships are not dictated by temporary emotions, but rather by enduring values such as honesty, integrity, wisdom, and mutual respect. A relationship rooted in virtue requires self-awareness and intentionality. It begins with understanding one's own character and committing to personal growth. If an individual seeks meaningful connections, they must first cultivate the qualities they desire in others. Integrity, kindness, and wisdom attract like-minded individuals who value the same principles. When people build relationships based on virtue, they are not merely seeking companionship for superficial reasons. They are looking to grow alongside others who share a commitment to higher ideals. This ensures that the relationship is not dependent on external factors like wealth, status, or personal gain, but rather on the genuine alignment of values. When relationships are based on fleeting pleasure, they often lack depth. Many connections form because of shared interests in entertainment, status, or temporary excitement. While such interactions may bring joy in the moment, they often fail to withstand hardship or change. A friendship or partnership built solely on pleasure may dissolve when difficulties arise, leaving both parties feeling disconnected and unfulfilled. In contrast, relationships grounded in virtue provide support and stability. When challenges emerge, those involved do not simply walk away. They rely on mutual respect and wisdom to navigate difficulties with patience and understanding. A bond formed through virtue does not crumble under pressure because it is rooted in something far greater than temporary satisfaction. Virtue-based relationships also eliminate the transactional nature that often exists in modern interactions. Many relationships are built on the expectation of reciprocity, what one can gain rather than what one can give. This approach leads to disappointment when expectations are not met. A person may feel frustrated if they do not receive the validation, favors, or attention they anticipated. However, when relationships are built on virtue, giving becomes an act of sincerity rather than obligation. True friendship, love, and companionship flourish when individuals offer kindness, support, and honesty without keeping score. They do so not because they expect something in return, but because they believe in the intrinsic value of being good to others. Another advantage of virtue-based relationships is their role in shaping character. The people one surrounds themselves with have a profound influence on their thoughts, behaviors, and moral compass. When relationships are built on virtue, individuals naturally inspire each other to become better versions of themselves. Conversations are meaningful, actions are guided by principles, and there is a shared commitment to personal and collective growth. Those who prioritize virtue in their relationships seek honesty over flattery, wisdom over ignorance, and encouragement over competition. They challenge each other to act with integrity and to uphold ethical values even when it is difficult. This mutual reinforcement of virtue creates a cycle of positive influence that extends beyond the relationship itself, impacting families, communities, and society as a whole. Moreover, a relationship based on virtue fosters a sense of trust and emotional security. People often hesitate to be vulnerable out of fear that their openness will be used against them. When a relationship is based on fleeting pleasure or selfish gain, there is always the underlying concern of betrayal or abandonment. However, when both individuals are committed to honesty, loyalty, and moral integrity, they create an environment where trust can thrive. In such relationships, people feel safe to express their thoughts, fears, and aspirations without fear of judgment or manipulation. This sense of security allows for deeper emotional connections, making the relationship more fulfilling and enduring. By contrast, relationships built on temporary pleasure often lead to disillusionment and emptiness. The excitement of pleasure fades, and when it does, those involved may find that there is little left to sustain the connection. The pursuit of pleasure, while enjoyable, is ultimately fleeting. leaving individuals constantly searching for the next source of gratification. In contrast, virtue provides a lasting sense of purpose and fulfillment. A relationship grounded in virtue does not rely on external stimulation to remain meaningful. Instead, it is nurtured by the shared pursuit of wisdom, justice, and moral excellence, which continue to enrich the relationship over time. Choosing to build relationships on virtue rather than fleeting pleasure requires patience and discernment. It means prioritizing depth over convenience, integrity over momentary happiness, and substance over superficial attraction. While it may take longer to cultivate such relationships, the rewards are immeasurable. The connections formed on this foundation are resilient, meaningful, and transformative. They provide not only companionship, but also a shared journey toward wisdom and fulfillment, ensuring that the relationship remains strong regardless of external circumstances. Practicing deep, attentive listening without ego is one of the most profound ways to build meaningful relationships and foster genuine understanding. In a world where conversations are often rushed, interrupted, or dominated by the need to express one's own thoughts, true listening has become rare. Many people listen only to respond rather than to understand, filtering what they hear through the lens of their own opinions, desires, and emotions. When ego is present, listening becomes selective and self-centered, preventing true connection. However, by practicing deep, ego-free listening, individuals can cultivate patience, empathy, and wisdom in their interactions. Listening without ego requires the ability to quiet the mind and focus entirely on the speaker. This means setting aside personal judgments, assumptions, and internal distractions to fully absorb what is being said. Often, when someone speaks, the listener's mind races to formulate a response, compare experiences, or even dismiss certain points. This habit undermines genuine understanding because the listener is not truly present. To listen deeply, one must resist the urge to interject, correct, or steer the conversation in a preferred direction. Instead, the goal should be to comprehend the speaker's perspective as they intend to convey it. This level of attentiveness creates an atmosphere of trust and respect, encouraging open and honest communication. Ego-driven listening often manifests as a desire to be right or to control the conversation. When someone listens with ego, they may feel the need to offer unsolicited advice, prove their intelligence, or refute the speaker's point of view. This creates a barrier to meaningful dialogue because it shifts the focus away from understanding and onto personal validation. True listening, on the other hand, involves humility. It requires acknowledging that one does not always have the answers, and that the speaker's perspective is valuable, even if it differs from one's own. By letting go of the need to dominate the conversation, a listener allows the speaker to feel heard and respected, which strengthens the relation. Another essential aspect of deep listening is patience. Conversations often take time to unfold, and meaningful insights may not be immediately apparent. When people rush to respond, they may miss important details or fail to grasp the full depth of what is being communicated. Patience in listening means giving the speaker the space to express their thoughts fully, without interruption or pressure. It also means resisting the impulse to prematurely interpret their words based on personal biases. By allowing the conversation to flow naturally, the listener can gain a deeper understanding of the speaker's emotions, intentions, and underlying concerns. Deep listening also involves an awareness of non-verbal communication. People express themselves not only through words but also through tone, facial expressions, and body language. A listener who is truly present will pay attention to these subtle cues, gaining insight into the speaker's emotional state and unspoken thoughts. This level of attentiveness demonstrates genuine care and concern, making the speaker feel valued. In contrast, a distracted listener, someone who is checking their phone, thinking about what to say next, or showing signs of impatience, can make the speaker feel unheard and dismissed. Being fully present in a conversation is one of the most powerful ways to show respect and strengthen connections. Empathy is a natural result of deep listening. When individuals set aside their ego and focus entirely on understanding the speaker, they begin to see the world through the other person's eyes. This fosters compassion and a deeper emotional bond. People often want to feel understood more than they want solutions to their problem. A listener who is quick to offer solutions without first understanding the speaker's emotions may come across as dismissive or impatient. Instead of immediately trying to fix a situation, an empathetic listener acknowledges the speaker's feelings, validates their experience, and offers support without judgment. This approach not only strengthens relationships, but also helps the speaker feel safe and valued. One of the greatest challenges in practicing deep attentive listening is the ability to detach from personal emotions. It is natural for people to feel defensive or triggered by certain topics, especially when conversations touch on personal beliefs or past experiences. However, a skilled listener recognizes when their emotions are interfering with their ability to truly hear the speaker. Instead of reacting impulsively or taking things personally, they take a step back, remain open-minded, and approach the conversation with curiosity rather than defensiveness. This level of emotional discipline allows for more productive and meaningful discussions, even in moments of disagreement. Listening without ego also fosters personal growth. When individuals make a habit of listening deeply, they gain new perspectives and insights that they might not have encountered otherwise. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to learn, expand one's understanding, and refine one's thinking. Those who listen only to reinforce their existing beliefs remain stagnant, while those who listen to learn continually evolve. This makes deep listening not just a tool for better relationships, but also a path to wisdom and self-improvement. Ultimately, deep, attentive listening without ego is a practice that requires conscious effort and self-discipline. It involves setting aside personal agendas, embracing humility, and approaching conversations with genuine curiosity and respect. By mastering this skill, individuals can cultivate stronger relationships, resolve conflicts more effectively, and contribute to a more understanding and connected world. Expecting imperfections and embracing acceptance is a fundamental practice in fostering strong and meaningful relationships. Human nature is inherently flawed, and no one is free from mistakes, weaknesses, or limitations. Despite this truth, many people enter relationships with unrealistic expectations, hoping that others will meet their ideals in every way. When these expectations are inevitably unmet, disappointment, frustration, or even resentment can take hold. However, by recognizing and accepting the imperfections of others, one can cultivate deeper connections based on understanding, patience, and genuine appreciation, rather than judgment and unrealistic demands. One of the key reasons people struggle with acceptance is their tendency to impose personal standards on others. Everyone views the world through their own experiences, values, and beliefs, often expecting those around them to think, behave, and react in similar ways. When differences arise, it can lead to misunderstanding and conflict. However, wisdom lies in recognizing that each person has their own unique journey, shaped by distinct backgrounds, struggles, and perspectives. By acknowledging this, one can replace frustration with empathy and criticism with compassion. Instead of focusing on how someone falls short, attention shifts toward appreciating their strengths and accepting their limitations with grace. Imperfections are not merely things to tolerate. They are a natural and necessary part of human existence. Flaws often provide opportunities for growth, learning, and deeper connection. If people were perfect, relationships would lack depth, as growth would be unnecessary. Mistakes, misunderstandings, and shortcomings challenge individuals to practice patience, forgiveness, and self-awareness. When approached with the right mindset, these imperfections become valuable teachers, helping both individuals and relationships evolve into something stronger and more meaningful. Many relationships suffer when people attempt to change others rather than accept them as they are. The desire to mold someone into an idealized version of themselves often leads to tension and disappointment. True connection is not about forcing another person to fit a predefined mold, but about embracing them in their entirety, their strengths, weaknesses, and everything in between. This does not mean one should ignore harmful behavior or tolerate disrespect, but rather that acceptance should be extended toward differences in personality, habits, and ways of thinking. Acceptance does not require agreement. It simply means acknowledging reality without resistance. Practicing acceptance also involves a shift in perspective regarding mistakes. People often judge others harshly for errors while expecting leniency for their own. However, everyone is bound to make mistakes, sometimes acting out of ignorance, stress, or emotion. Holding grudges or dwelling on the shortcomings of others only leads to unnecessary suffering. By adopting a mindset of understanding, one can navigate conflicts with wisdom rather than resentment. Forgiveness becomes easier when one realizes that imperfections are universal and that no person is exempt from occasional misjudgment or failure. Additionally, embracing acceptance creates an environment of emotional safety in relationships. When individuals feel they must constantly prove themselves or fear being judged for every mistake, they struggle to be authentic. However, when acceptance is present, people feel secure enough to be vulnerable, honest, and open. This deepens trust and fosters a sense of belonging, making relationships more fulfilling. Acceptance does not mean ignoring faults or excusing poor behavior, but rather creating space for individuals to be human without fear of constant criticism. Moreover, accepting imperfections in others requires self-acceptance as well. Often, the inability to tolerate flaws in others stems from an internal struggle with one's own perceived inadequacies. When individuals hold themselves to impossibly high standards, they may project the same expectations onto those around them. However, self-compassion allows for greater compassion toward others. By recognizing and embracing one's own imperfections, it becomes easier to extend the same understanding to others. True acceptance begins within, and by learning to embrace personal flaws, one naturally becomes more accepting of those in others. Ultimately, expecting imperfections and embracing acceptance leads to stronger, more resilient relationships. It eliminates unnecessary frustration, fosters deeper understanding, and creates space for genuine connection. When people let go of unrealistic expectations and appreciate others for who they truly are, relationships transform into sources of support, trust, and mutual growth. Instead of resisting reality, one learns to work with it, finding beauty and meaning in imperfection rather than seeking an unattainable ideal. Giving without expecting anything in return is one of the purest expressions of kindness and generosity. In a world where many interactions are transactional, where people often give with an expectation of receiving something back, whether it be recognition, gratitude, or a favor in return, true generosity stands out as a rare and noble quality. Genuine giving is not about keeping score or seeking validation, but about extending kindness simply because it is the right thing to do. When one learns to give selflessly, relationships deepen, inner peace grows, and a greater sense of fulfillment emerges. One of the reasons people struggle with selfless giving is that human nature often inclines toward reciprocity. Society teaches individuals from an early age that giving should be rewarded, whether through praise, appreciation, or a returned favor. While reciprocity is natural and can strengthen social bonds, it can also create an expectation that diminishes the purity of generosity. If someone gives only with the hope of receiving something back, their kindness becomes conditional, and disappointment follows when expectations are unmet. However, when giving is done without attachment to a specific outcome, it becomes an act of true generosity, one that is free, abundant, and fulfilling in itself. Selfless giving is not just about material things. It extends to time, energy, kindness, and emotional support. A person who offers a listening ear without expecting anything in return provides a valuable gift, the gift of presence and understanding. Similarly, someone who helps another without seeking recognition demonstrates a form of giving that uplifts both the giver and the receiver. The impact of such acts often goes beyond what is immediately visible. A kind gesture, a word of encouragement, or a selfless act of service can create a ripple effect, inspiring others to give freely as well. Moreover, true generosity fosters stronger relationships. When people give without expecting anything in return, they cultivate trust, goodwill, and genuine connection. Relationships based on mutual benefit often feel transactional and fragile, whereas those built on selfless giving create a deeper emotional bond. When individuals give from a place of sincerity rather than obligation, others feel valued and appreciated without pressure or guilt. This leads to a more authentic and fulfilling connection, where kindness flows naturally rather than being forced or calculated. Selfless giving also brings an inner sense of peace and contentment. When people give freely, without the weight of expectations. They experience the joy of contributing to someone else's well-being. The act of giving itself becomes the reward. This is why those who dedicate their lives to service, whether through volunteering, mentoring, or simple acts of daily kindness, often report a profound sense of purpose and happiness. True generosity shifts the focus from self-interest to a broader, more meaningful perspective, reminding individuals that fulfillment often comes not from what they receive, but from what they contribute. Ultimately, learning to give without expecting anything in return is a practice that enriches both the giver and the receiver. It transforms relationships, nurtures inner peace, and fosters a more compassionate world. When giving is done purely for the sake of kindness, it becomes a source of true joy, proving that the most meaningful acts are those done with no strings attached. Surrounding yourself with those who elevate your character is one of the most powerful ways to grow as a person and lead a meaningful life. The people one associates with have a profound influence on their thoughts, actions, and overall mindset. Human nature is deeply shaped by environment and social interactions, meaning that the company one keeps can either strengthen or weaken their values, ambitions, and sense of purpose. By intentionally choosing to be around individuals who inspire integrity, wisdom, and virtue, a person naturally develops into a better version of themselves. The influence of others is often subtle but powerful. People tend to adopt the habits, attitudes, and behaviors of those they spend the most time with. If someone is surrounded by individuals who lack discipline, integrity, or a sense of purpose, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain strong personal values. Negative influences can erode one's character over time, leading to compromises in principles and misguided priorities. On the other hand, when a person engages with those who embody wisdom, kindness, and self-discipline, they are naturally encouraged to cultivate those qualities within themselves. The presence of individuals who uphold high moral standards serves as a reminder of what is possible and provides motivation to strive for excellence. True friendships should challenge a person to grow, not enable complacency. Those who elevate character are not simply agreeable companions, but individuals who encourage honesty, self-reflection, and accountability. They provide constructive criticism when necessary, helping others recognize their flaws without judgment or hostility. A strong friend or mentor will not shy away from pointing out areas of improvement, but they will do so with kindness and a genuine desire to help. Growth often comes from discomfort, and the best relationships are those that encourage personal development rather than reinforcing destructive habits or indulging in mediocrity. Character is often tested in difficult times, and having the right people around can make all the difference. In moments of doubt, failure, or moral dilemmas, the influence of those in one's inner circle can determine whether they rise above challenges or succumb to them. Those who uplift character provide encouragement, wisdom, and strength when it is most needed. They remind others to act with integrity even when it is difficult, to persevere through adversity with resilience, and to remain humble in times of success. Their presence creates an environment where growth is not only possible but inevitable. Choosing to surround oneself with people who elevate character requires discernment and courage. It may mean distancing from relationships that no longer serve personal growth, or making the difficult choice to walk away from negative influences. While it is natural to desire belonging and companionship, true fulfillment comes from relationships that align with personal values and aspirations. Meaningful connections should bring out the best in a person, reinforcing their commitment to virtue and excellence rather than distracting them from their highest potential. By intentionally cultivating relationships with those who inspire wisdom, integrity, and strength, individuals create a foundation for lifelong growth, resilience, and fulfillment. Focusing on one's own actions and letting go of what cannot be controlled is a fundamental principle for cultivating inner peace, resilience, and wisdom. Many people spend significant energy worrying about external circumstances, other people's opinions, or unpredictable events. This attachment to control leads to frustration, anxiety, and disappointment because the external world is inherently uncertain and beyond one's full command. However, by shifting focus inward toward personal choices, attitudes, and responses, one can develop a sense of empowerment and clarity, free from the burden of trying to control the uncontrollable. One of the greatest sources of stress comes from attempting to change things that are not within one's power. Whether it is another person's behavior, an unfair situation, or the uncertainties of life, the desire to control external factors often leads to unnecessary suffering. When individuals become overly attached to specific outcomes, they place their happiness in the hands of forces beyond their reach. This creates a cycle of frustration, where contentment is always dependent on external validation, approval, or circumstances aligning perfectly. However, true peace comes from recognizing that while external events are unpredictable, personal actions, thoughts, and responses remain firmly within one's grasp. Focusing on one's own actions means taking responsibility for thoughts, choices, and behavior, rather than blaming external circumstances. Many people fall into the habit of attributing their struggles to outside forces, difficult people, unfair systems, or bad luck. While external challenges are real, dwelling on them does not lead to progress. Instead, growth happens when individuals take ownership of how they respond to difficulties. A person cannot control whether others treat them with kindness, but they can control how they choose to react. They cannot dictate every event in life, but they can decide to face challenges with resilience and wisdom. This shift in mindset transforms obstacles into opportunities for personal development rather than sources of despair. Letting go of what cannot be controlled also allows for emotional freedom. When people constantly fixate on changing things beyond their power, they become mentally and emotionally drained. Worrying about what others think, dwelling on the past, or fearing an uncertain future all lead to unnecessary stress. By accepting the limits of control and focusing on present actions, individuals free themselves from the weight of unproductive concerns. This acceptance does not mean passivity or inaction. It means directing energy where it is most effective. Instead of wasting time resisting what cannot be changed, energy can be channeled into meaningful efforts that bring real progress and fulfillment. Practicing this mindset requires patience and self-discipline. The urge to control outcomes is deeply ingrained, and letting go can feel uncomfortable at first. However, with consistent effort, it becomes easier to distinguish between what is within one's power and what is not. Over time, this shift brings a sense of stability and confidence, even in the face of uncertainty. By focusing on one's own actions and surrendering attachment to external control, individuals cultivate a life rooted in wisdom, resilience, and inner peace. By focusing on our own actions and letting go of what we cannot control, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering and cultivate a life of wisdom, resilience, and peace. Instead of being consumed by frustration over external events, we can channel our energy into what truly matters: our choices, our mindset, and our character. True strength comes not from controlling the outside world, but from mastering our own responses to it. When we embrace this mindset, we move through life with greater clarity and purpose, unshaken by circumstances, and empowered by the knowledge that our growth and fulfillment are always within our own hands.